"She's defective, Mom. We can't raise a damaged child." My son, my own son, said those words about his 2-hour-old daughter while I stood in a hospital hallway, clutching a handmade baby blanket, watching my world collapse. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how a grandmother loses her granddaughter, and what happens when that grandmother decides the system picked the wrong woman to fight. My name is Margaret Armstrong. I'm 57 years old, recently retired from 30 years of nursing, and until 3 months ago, I thought I knew my son Daniel. I thought I'd raised him right, raised him alone after my husband James died when Daniel was just 3 years old. I worked double shifts, put myself through nursing school with a toddler on my hip, built a life from nothing. I was so proud of the man Daniel became. Successful tech executive, beautiful wife, perfect suburban life. I had no idea I'd raised a monster. It was 2 a.m. when my phone rang, that specific ringtone I'd set for Daniel. My heart leaped before I was even fully awake. This is it. Emma was in labor. I was about to meet my first grandchild. I'd been waiting 9 months for this call. The baby blanket sat ready on my nightstand, soft yellow with hand-embroidered flowers, every stitch made during those long evenings alone in my house. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, holding that tiny baby, looking into her face, seeing James's eyes looking back at me through another generation. I threw on clothes and drove to St. Mary's Hospital with shaking hands on the steering wheel. The parking lot was nearly empty at that hour. I clutched the blanket to my chest as I rushed through the automatic doors, my old nursing instincts cataloging the familiar smells of antiseptic and floor polish. 30 years I'd worked in hospitals. This was supposed to be the good kind of visit. Daniel met me in the hallway outside labor and delivery. That's when I knew something was catastrophically wrong. His face? God, his face. It was the expression he used for failed stock portfolios and delayed work projects, cold, controlled, calculating, not the face of a new father meeting his mother's joyful eyes, not the face of my son, Mom. His voice was flat, emotionless. "There's a problem with the baby." My nursing training kicked in immediately. Complications happen. I shifted into problem-solving mode, already thinking NICU protocols, respiratory issues, jaundice treatments. "She's deaf." He said it like he was reporting a software malfunction. "Profoundly deaf," Daniel continued, crossing his arms like he was giving a business presentation. "They did the newborn hearing screening twice. She failed both times. The audiologist says it's severe bilateral sensorineural hearing loss, probably genetic." He paused, and then delivered the words that would haunt me for the next 7 years. "We've already contacted an adoption agency. We're giving her up." I heard the words, but they didn't process, like he was speaking a language my brain couldn't translate. "What?" My voice came out as a whisper. "We're giving her up for adoption, Mom. We can't raise a damaged child." Damaged. That single word hit me like a physical assault. I actually stepped backward, my shoulder slamming into the wall behind me. The baby blanket slipped from my hands. "Daniel, she's your daughter. She's not damaged, she's just... There are resources now, so many options. Cochlear implants, sign language, speech therapy, early intervention programs." "Mom." He held up his hand like he was stopping traffic. "Emma and I have plans. We have a life trajectory. A deaf child doesn't fit into that." His voice was so reasonable, so calm, like he was explaining why he'd returned a defective appliance. "She'll need constant interventions, special schools, accommodations. Do you know what that would cost? Not just money, time, energy, our entire lifestyle. We did the research. It's not feasible." I stared at this stranger wearing my son's face. When had he become this? This cold, calculating creature who spoke about his newborn daughter like she was a failed investment? "Let me see her." My voice was stronger now, trembling with an anger I was trying desperately to control. "Let me at least see my granddaughter." "That's not a good idea. It'll just make this harder." "Harder?" I was shouting now, and I didn't care. A nurse down the hall turned to look, concern creasing her face. "Daniel, you're talking about abandoning your child because she can't hear. We're placing her with a family who specializes in special needs adoptions." His tone remained infuriatingly reasonable, like he was explaining basic math to a child. "The agency says there are couples specifically looking for deaf babies. She'll go to people who are equipped to handle her condition, people who know what they're doing." Emma appeared behind him then. My daughter-in-law Emma, 29 years old, marketing executive, the woman I'd welcomed into our family with open arms. Her face was blotchy with tears, her hospital gown wrinkled, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. The guilt was written all over her, but so was the resignation. She'd already made her choice. "Emma, please." I tried to move toward her, to reason with her, to make her see the insanity of what they were doing. "Please, you carried her for 9 months. You felt her move inside you. You can't just—" "It's done, Margaret." Emma's voice was hollow, defeated. "The agency is picking her up in an hour. We've already signed the relinquishment forms. The paperwork is filed. You can't— I won't let you—" Instinct took over. I pushed past Daniel toward the nursery, driven by a desperate primal need to reach my granddaughter, before these strangers stole her away. I would hold her. I would look into her face, and she would know that at least one person in this family wanted her, loved her, would fight for her. 2 security guards materialized out of nowhere. One of them, a younger man with kind eyes and an apologetic expression, gently but firmly caught my arm. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step back. That's my granddaughter." I was crying now, hot tears streaming down my face, my voice breaking. "My son is making a terrible mistake. He's abandoning his daughter because she's deaf. You can't let him do this." "Ma'am," the guard's voice was soft but unyielding. "The parents have the legal right to make decisions about the child's placement. If you don't have custody rights or guardianship paperwork, I can't let you through. She's 2 hours old." The words came out as a sob. She hasn't even been held by her family. She hasn't been— Through the nursery window, I saw her. A nurse in pink scrubs, not someone I knew, not someone who understood what was happening, lifted a tiny bundle wrapped in the standard hospital blanket. White with pink and blue stripes, not the soft yellow one I'd made, not the one with flowers and love and hope stitched into every inch. The nurse was carrying my granddaughter away. I caught one glimpse, just one, of the hospital bracelet on that impossibly small wrist as the nurse turned toward the door. They'd named her Lily, and they were throwing her away like garbage. "Please." I grabbed Daniel's arm, abandoned every shred of pride I had left. "Please, if you won't keep her, let me take her. I'll raise her. I'm only 57, I'm healthy, I just retired. I have time, I have savings, I have everything she needs. Please don't give her to strangers." Daniel pulled his arm away from my grip like I was contaminated. "Mom, you don't know what you're asking. You're romanticizing this because you're emotional. A deaf child requires specialized care you're not trained for. You've never dealt with a disability like this. It's better this way. She'll go to a family who actually knows how to handle her. I can learn." The decision is made. The adoption agency representative appeared then, a woman named Miss Patricia Holloway, according to her name badge, probably in her early 40s, with a clipboard and the emotional warmth of a parking meter. She looked at me with something between pity and annoyance. "Mrs. Armstrong, I need to inform you that this is a closed adoption. All records will be sealed by court order. You will not have access to any information about the child's placement or her adoptive family." She spoke in the practiced tone of someone who'd delivered this speech 1,000 times. "The biological parents have rights. You, as a grandparent, do not." I wanted to scream. I wanted to collapse on the floor and refuse to move until someone showed some basic human decency. Instead, I stood there shaking, watching my son turn his back on his daughter, watching Emma avoid my eyes, watching this woman with her clipboard talk about privacy protections and birth parent rights like she was discussing property law instead of a human child. I left the hospital at 4:47 a.m. without ever touching my granddaughter. Within 48 hours, Daniel and Emma's house had a for sale sign in the front yard. Within 1 week, they were gone. Moved to Seattle, 2,000 miles away. New phone numbers, new email addresses, every method of contact blocked. I tried calling, straight to voicemail, then disconnected. I tried email, bounced back as undeliverable. I showed up at Emma's parents' house in desperation. They met me at the door with pity in their eyes and told me they'd been instructed not to speak to me about anything. I hired a lawyer named Robert Chen, He was compassionate and honest. He took my retainer and spent 3 months fighting, then called me into his office and told me the brutal truth. I had zero legal standing. Grandparents have no rights when biological parents voluntarily surrender a child for adoption. The system is designed to protect privacy. The records are sealed by court order. There's nothing to be done through legal channels. I hired a private investigator named Denise Shaw. She worked for 3 months and hit the same walls: adoption records sealed, agency refusing all contact, no paper trail to follow, no way to track where Lily had been placed. I was completely, systematically shut out. Now I stand in my empty house, the house where I raised Daniel alone after James died, where I'd imagined teaching my granddaughter to bake cookies and read bedtime stories, holding a yellow blanket that will never wrap around the baby it was made for. I'm 57 years old. I'm a recently retired nurse with arthritis starting in my hands and high blood pressure I'm supposed to manage with meditation and low-sodium meals. I just lost my only grandchild to a system designed to keep us apart, surrendered by my own son who looked at his perfect, tiny daughter and called her defective. Any reasonable person would tell me to grieve and move on, to accept reality, to let go. But I didn't survive raising a child alone after losing my husband at 27 by being reasonable. I didn't work double shifts for 30 years while putting myself through nursing school with a toddler, depending on me by accepting defeat. I didn't build a life from absolute nothing by letting go when things got hard. I fold the yellow blanket carefully and place it in my closet, not packing it away, saving it, because I'm going to find Lily Armstrong. I don't know how long it will take. I don't know what I'll have to sacrifice. I don't know what laws I might have to bend or what boundaries I'll have to cross. But I will find my granddaughter, and I will bring her home, and I will give her everything Daniel denied her: love, family, acceptance, and a future where she knows she was wanted from the moment she was born. The adoption agency thinks their sealed records will stop me. Daniel thinks distance and blocked numbers will stop me. They have absolutely no idea what a grandmother with nothing left to lose is capable of. My name is Margaret Armstrong, and the search for Lily begins right now. 6 months after losing Lily, I sat in my living room surrounded by rejection letters, trying to figure out how you find someone the entire legal system is designed to hide. My savings account had hemorrhaged $18,000. Robert Chen, my attorney, had exhausted every legal avenue. Denise Shaw, the private investigator, had hit walls at every turn. Harbor Hope Adoptive Services sent me a cease and desist letter threatening harassment charges. I'd found Daniel's address in Seattle through LinkedIn. I drove there once, 22 hours straight, and knocked on his door. Emma answered, her face going pale. "Please leave, Margaret. We've moved on. You need to move on too." She closed the door in my face. Daniel called the police. I left before they arrived. I attended a grandparents' rights support group at the community center. 12 people fighting for access to grandchildren, custody disputes, visitation denials, parental alienation. When I explained my situation, they stared. "Your son gave her away?" one grandmother asked. "Voluntarily?" The group leader, Patricia, gently delivered the truth. "Margaret, legally, you have no case. When biological parents voluntarily terminate rights, grandparents have zero standing." I stopped going. One September evening, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the yellow baby blanket, drowning in questions. Where was Lily right now? Did anyone hold her, love her? Did anyone sign to her? Or was she already growing up in silence, with language passing around her like wind she couldn't catch? Would she grow up believing her biological family abandoned her because something was wrong with her? That thought made me physically ill. Then a simple realization struck me. If I'm going to find Lily, I need to understand Lily's world. I needed to learn sign language. ASL 1 at Riverside Community College met Tuesday and Thursday evenings. I was the oldest student by 20 years, mostly college kids fulfilling requirements, some social work students, one police officer. The instructor was Professor David Martinez, a deaf man in his 40s with an expressive face and patient hands. Through an interpreter, he explained, "You're not just learning hand shapes, you're learning a language with its own grammar, culture, and history. Respect that." My arthritic hands made finger spelling feel impossible at first. but I practiced obsessively. Every morning with coffee, every evening before bed. Flashcards, apps, YouTube videos until my eyes burned. I told people I was learning to connect with deaf neighbors. A partial truth. By November, I'd enrolled in ASL 2. By January, ASL 3. I volunteered at the state school for the deaf, helping in the library, tutoring after school. I attended deaf community events, coffee socials, theater productions, poetry slams where words became three-dimensional art. I met deaf adults who shared their stories. Marcus, a software engineer, grew up in a hearing family who never learned to sign. 18 years of silent dinners. Rachel, a teacher, described the joy of discovering Gallaudet University, a world where she wasn't disabled, just different. Thomas, an architect, talked about fighting for accommodations his entire career. An architect. Something stirred in my memory. I learned about autism, the discrimination deaf people face, the assumption that hearing is superior. I learned about decades of fighting for ASL recognition in schools, the controversy over cochlear implants, the pain of being told your natural language isn't real. And with every story, every sign, every piece of deaf culture I absorbed, I felt an uncomfortable recognition crawling up my spine. I'd seen this world before, 30 years ago, through someone I loved, someone I'd erased. It happened on a Tuesday night in March. I was practicing signs in my living room, running through vocabulary. My hands formed the sign for home, both hands in a flat O shape, touching my face, then moving to touch near my mouth. And suddenly, I wasn't in my living room anymore. I was 26 years old, watching James make that same sign. Home. He was telling me about finding an apartment, his hands moving with fluid grace I'd found so beautiful. His face was animated, alive, every emotion visible because that's how deaf people communicate with their entire bodies. James, my husband, Daniel's father. James, who was deaf. How had I spent 6 months learning ASL without consciously connecting it to my own husband? Shame. 30 years of shame. I went to the attic and opened boxes I'd sealed after James died. Photos spilled across the floor. James at his architecture firm, signing with 3 other deaf colleagues. James at our wedding, half the guests communicated in ASL. James's deaf sister Rebecca, who I'd lost contact with after he died. James's hearing aids, the ones he wore when I asked him to, when I needed him to seem more normal. I found our ASL dictionary, my handwritten notes in the margins from when I was learning to communicate with him. I'd been fluent once, before he died, before I buried that part of our life. I found James's journal, leather-bound, written in English for my benefit. I opened to a random page dated 2 months before he died. Margaret asked me again today to wear my hearing aids to Daniel's preschool conference. She says it's easier for everyone. I know what she means, easier for her. She's ashamed. She loves me, but she's ashamed of what I am. She wants Daniel to grow up normal. She doesn't use that word, but I see it. She stopped signing in public after Daniel was born. When Daniel asks why Daddy talks differently, she tells him I have a hearing problem, like it's a medical condition to overcome, not just a different way of being. She hides my deafness from him, makes it seem like something I overcame rather than who I am. Like being deaf is a tragedy I survived instead of a culture I belong to. I hope someday she realizes there's nothing wrong with being deaf. I hope Daniel never inherits her shame. The journal fell from my hands. I collapsed on the attic floor, surrounded by photos of the man I loved and the life I'd erased, and sobbed, deep wrenching sobs from a place I'd locked away for 30 years. I created this. I created Daniel's ableism. I taught my son that deaf meant broken, that deafness was something to hide, to be ashamed of. I erased James's identity, his deaf identity, his culture, his community, to make Daniel acceptable, to make our family normal. And now Lily, James's granddaughter carrying his genetics, his deafness, his legacy, was paying the price for my cowardice. When Daniel looked at his deaf daughter and called her defective, he was using words I'd taught him. When he decided she didn't fit his life plans, he was following my model, that deaf people need to conform, to become acceptable to the hearing world. I did this. This wasn't just about finding Lily anymore. This was about redemption. About honoring James, the man I'd loved but never fully accepted. About giving Lily what I'd failed to give James, complete unconditional acceptance of who she was. I would find my granddaughter. I would bring her home, and I would raise her in a world where being deaf wasn't something to fix or hide. It was simply who she was, beautiful and complete. I owed James that much. I owed Lily everything. The search wasn't over. It was just beginning. But now I knew exactly what I was fighting for, and exactly what I was fighting against. I was fighting my own legacy of shame, and I would spend the rest of my life making it right. 7 years of my life consumed by a search that everyone told me was impossible. I became fluent in ASL, not just conversational but culturally fluent. I volunteered at 5 different schools for the deaf across 3 states. I attended every deaf festival, conference, community event within a 300-mile radius. I befriended social workers, teachers, advocates, building a network carefully, never revealing my true purpose. I created a database on my laptop, every deaf girl born within 6 months of Lily's birthday in a 4-state region. I monitored adoption forums, disability advocacy groups, special education Facebook groups. I learned the patterns, which agencies handled deaf adoptions, which families sought them out, which warning signs indicated struggling placements. The years blurred together. I turned 60, then 62, then 64. My retirement savings gone. I picked up per diem nursing shifts at hospitals, working overnight weekends to fund my search. My friends staged an intervention at my kitchen table one Sunday afternoon. "Margaret, you've done everything you can," they said gently. "You need to let go." But I couldn't stop. Every deaf child I met could be Lily. Every lead could be the one. I tracked Daniel through a friend's Facebook account. He'd blocked me everywhere, but he hadn't blocked Linda from my book club. Seattle, big house, successful career, and a son, Tyler, age 5. Hearing, perfect, constantly photographed. Emma's posts were full of #blessed and #perfectfamily and #momlife. They'd erased Lily completely, as if she'd never existed. That hurt worse than anything. Year 2, I met a deaf 4-year-old named Lily at a signing event in Portland. My heart stopped when I heard her name. I approached the family carefully, casually. Wrong adoption date, wrong agency, not her. Year 3, I tracked down adoption records matching Lily's exact timeline through a contact at a disability advocacy organization. I spent 2 months investigating. The family had moved to Canada. Another dead end. Year 4, a teacher at a school in Denver told me about a deaf student named Lily Armstrong. I drove 8 hours, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Wrong family. Just a coincidental name. The girl's parents were both deaf. She'd never been in the adoption system at all. Year 5, I spent 3 months and $4,000 investigating a closed adoption that matched every single detail. Timeline, location, agency type, everything. The family refused to meet with me. Their lawyer sent a cease and desist letter. I hired my own lawyer to push back. 2 months later, I discovered it was the wrong child. Different birth hospital, different birthday. Each false lead broke me a little more. I developed high blood pressure. My doctor prescribed medication and stress management. I had nightmares, Lily calling for me in sign language, her small hands forming desperate signs, but I couldn't reach her. I was always running toward her, but she kept getting further away. My friends whispered that I was obsessed, that I needed therapy. Maybe they were right, but the deaf community understood. They'd seen too many deaf children lost in systems that didn't serve them, placed with families who saw deafness as a problem to fix rather than an identity to celebrate. They helped me search because they knew what was at stake. I refined my approach, stopped chasing every rumor, started focusing on systemic patterns. Which schools had deaf students whose families refused ASL? Which districts had ongoing complaints about inadequate accommodations? Where were the battles happening? Year 7. April. I was volunteering at a Deaf Education Advocacy Coalition meeting, exhausted and honestly considering whether it was finally time to give up. Then I overheard 2 caseworkers talking near the coffee station. "The Riverside Elementary situation is getting worse," one said, a woman named Jennifer I'd met at a few conferences. That 7-year-old deaf girl, Lily, Her parents are fighting the IEP tooth and nail. They refuse ASL instruction, oral only, even though she's clearly struggling. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. They adopted her as an infant, the other caseworker added. Expected cochlear implants would fix everything. The implants didn't work, and now they're in complete denial. That poor girl is 7 years old and barely has language, oral or signed. It's heartbreaking. 7 years old, named Lily, adopted as an infant, parents who expected to fix her deafness. I approached them carefully, professionally. I'm sorry, I couldn't help overhearing. I'm an ASL volunteer tutor. Would the school be interested in additional support? Jennifer's face lit up. Actually, yes. Let me give you the coordinator's information. Riverside Elementary, 2 hours south. Same state where Lily was born. I drove there the next morning, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I met with the special education coordinator, Maria Santos, and offered free tutoring services. She accepted immediately, understaffed, overwhelmed, grateful for help. Can I see the students I'd be working with? I asked. She walked me through the school, past classrooms, down hallways, toward the cafeteria. And then I saw her. Through the cafeteria window, a small girl sitting alone at a table, watching other children's mouths move as they laughed and talked around her. She was trying to follow conversation she couldn't access, her face a mixture of concentration and loneliness that made my chest physically ache. She had James's face, his exact facial structure, his eyes, his expressions. After 7 years of searching, I'd found Lily. I found Lily on a Tuesday. By Friday, I was volunteering at Riverside Elementary as an ASL tutor. For 3 months, I showed up 3 times a week, working with several deaf students in the mainstreaming program. But my focus was always Lily, always professionally, always appropriately. Building trust takes time, and I had nothing but time now. Lily was 7 years old but functioning academically at a kindergarten level. She had virtually no language. Her oral speech was garbled and unclear, her lip reading maybe 25% accurate on a good day. The school had only recently forced the Mitchells to accept ASL services through an IEP hearing. They'd fought it tooth and nail. I introduced visual learning techniques, games, stories told in ASL with expressive faces and animated signs. And I watched Lily transform. Within 2 weeks, her signing improved dramatically. She was language-starved, a child who'd spent 7 years locked in silence, desperate for communication, for connection, for someone to finally talk to her. She started laughing, asking questions, her small hands forming signs with increasing confidence. She told me things. In halting, imperfect signs at first, then with growing fluency. No one home talks me. Parents angry when I not understand. Brother laughs at me. Calls me stupid. Dinner I sit. Watch mouths. Understand nothing. Every session I documented everything, her isolation, her academic delays despite clear intelligence, the homework assignments requiring auditory processing with 0 accommodations, the speech therapist's notes about parental noncompliance, the counselor's concerns about Lily's depression and social withdrawal. I took photos. I recorded videos of Lily signing about her home life. I collected statements from the ASL interpreter who'd witnessed the Mitchells' hostility towards sign language. I built a case brick by brick, evidence by evidence, because I knew this confrontation was coming. 4 months into tutoring, Karen Mitchell stormed into Riverside Elementary like a hurricane. Someone had recognized my last name, Armstrong, and done research. Probably another parent who'd heard me talking with Lily, who'd noticed how much time I spent with this one particular deaf girl, who'd gotten curious and Googled until the pieces clicked together. Karen's face was red with rage as she burst into the special education coordinator's office where I was reviewing Lily's progress reports. "You're her biological grandmother?" Her voice was shrill, accusing. "You've been manipulating your way into my daughter's life? This is harassment, this is stalking, I'm calling the police right now." The principal, Dr. Susan Ramirez, appeared immediately, trying to de-escalate, but Karen was screaming now, pointing at me like I was a criminal. "We adopted Lily fair and square. You have no rights. You abandoned her." "Her father abandoned her," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I've spent 7 years searching for her. You can't just. We have legal custody, you can't. Robert Mitchell arrived 10 minutes later with their attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Gerald Hutchins, who immediately started throwing around words like restraining order and violation of adoption confidentiality. They threatened to pull Lily from the school entirely, to homeschool her where I couldn't reach her. I'd been waiting for this moment. I handed Dr. Ramirez a folder. This is 4 months of documentation showing systematic educational neglect and emotional abuse of Lily Mitchell. Gerald Hutchins tried to grab it. Dr. Ramirez held it away from him. Inside you'll find statements from Lily's speech therapist about parental refusal to learn ASL, I continued, my voice steady. Notes from the school counselor about Lily's isolation and depression, photos of homework assignments requiring auditory processing with no accommodations provided, and videos of Lily telling me in her own words, in sign language her parents refused to learn, about eating dinner in complete silence every night, while her hearing brother and parents have conversations she cannot access. Karen's face went white. You recorded my daughter without permission. I recorded a student during educational sessions with full school knowledge and permission, I corrected. Everything was above board. Unlike your treatment of a deaf child you adopted expecting to fix. How dare you? The cochlear implants didn't work, did they? I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. You adopted Lily believing surgery would make her hearing. When it failed, you blamed her. You spent 7 years denying her access to language, her natural language, because you refused to accept that she's deaf. We've given her everything. Robert finally spoke, his voice desperate. Private speech therapy, oral education programs, every opportunity to integrate. You've given her nothing, I said, except loneliness. 2 days later, my attorney, a disability rights lawyer named Patricia Vance, filed for emergency custody. The evidence was devastating. The Mitchells had adopted Lily through Harbor Hope Adoptive Services, which marketed deaf children as special needs discount adoptions to families willing to take on challenges. The agency's screening process for cultural competency with deaf children was virtually non-existent. They'd told the Mitchells that cochlear implants had a 90% success rate, a grotesque exaggeration. They'd promised Lily would be essentially hearing by age 3. When reality didn't match the sales pitch, the Mitchells had responded with denial, frustration, and systematic neglect. Patricia also discovered that Harbor Hope was now under state investigation for multiple placement failures. Our case was adding fuel to a fire already burning. The custody hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. I did something I knew would hurt, but had to be done. I subpoenaed Daniel. My son was forced to fly in from Seattle, forced to sit in that witness box, forced to answer questions under oath about why he'd surrendered his daughter for adoption. Mr. Armstrong, why did you place your biological daughter for adoption? Daniel's jaw tightened. She had special needs we weren't equipped to handle. She was deaf. Yes. And you referred to her as... Patricia consulted her notes. What exact words did you use in the hospital? Daniel's eyes found mine across the courtroom. I saw the moment he realized what I'd done, that I'd remembered everything, documented everything. I said she was defective. The courtroom went silent. And you have a son now? From your current marriage? Yes. Tyler, he's 5. And Tyler can hear? Yes. Do you have any contact with Lily? No. Have you ever attempted contact in 7 years? No. No further questions. The Mitchells' attorney tried to use Daniel's abandonment against me. This clearly runs in the family, Your Honor, but it backfired spectacularly. I wasn't the one who'd given up a child. I was the one who'd spent 7 years and my entire retirement savings trying to undo that abandonment. The judge ordered a 2-week evaluation. Lily was placed temporarily with a deaf foster couple, Marcus and Rachel Washington, the same Marcus I'd met years ago in the deaf community. I got supervised visits. I brought photo albums of James, told Lily about her grandfather who was deaf, brilliant, an architect who designed beautiful buildings. Lily's small hands formed the signs. Grandfather like me? I nodded, tears streaming down my face. exactly like you. And he would have loved you so much." 2 weeks later, Judge Michelle Carter delivered her ruling, full custody to Margaret Armstrong. The Mitchells' adoption was dissolved due to agency fraud and evidence of ongoing neglect. Lily was coming home. 3 months after the custody ruling, I brought Lily home to a house I'd spent weeks transforming. Visual doorbells that flashed lights throughout the house, alarm clocks that vibrated the bed, smoke detectors with strobe lights. Every accommodation a deaf child needed, I installed. Lily's room, I'd painted it purple, her favorite color, was filled with books in ASL, art supplies, toys, and a bulletin board where we could leave each other notes and drawings. But the biggest change wasn't in the house, it was in Lily's life. I enrolled her in the state school for the deaf. For the first time in her 7 years, Lily was surrounded by signing peers and deaf teachers who communicated fluently in her language. She wasn't the broken child who couldn't keep up, she was just Lily, smart, creative, funny Lily. The transformation was miraculous. Within 3 months, Lily went from functionally nonverbal to conversational ASL fluency. The language had always been inside her, desperate to come out. She'd just been locked in a prison of silence for 7 years. Now the words poured out of her hands. Questions, jokes, stories, observations. She talked constantly, making up for lost time. She made friends. Real friends. Best friends. Kids who didn't exclude her from conversations, who didn't make fun of her voice, who communicated in her language naturally and effortlessly. She joined the art club. Her drawings were beautiful, expressive, full of color and emotion. Her teachers told me she was exceptionally bright, probably gifted. She'd just been trapped. I introduced Lily to her grandfather's legacy. We visited buildings James had designed, a library downtown, an office complex, a community center. I showed her his architecture awards, the newspaper articles about his firm. I connected her with James's old deaf colleagues from the architecture firm, now retired but still sharp and welcoming. They embraced Lily immediately, told her stories about her brilliant grandfather, about the buildings he'd dreamed into existence, about his terrible jokes and his love of spicy food, and the way he'd mentored young deaf architects. Lily's eyes grew wide. Grandfather was deaf? Like me? Exactly like you, I signed. And he was amazing. We attended deaf festivals where Lily saw deaf doctors, lawyers, artists, professors, engineers, successful, happy people living full lives. She learned deaf history, deaf poetry, ASL storytelling. She performed in her school's winter showcase, her small hands painting stories in the air while I cried in the audience. One night, 6 months after she came home, Lily crawled into my lap while I was reading. Her small hands formed the signs hesitantly. "Grandmother, am I broken?" My heart shattered. I tilted her chin up so she could see my face, my expression, the truth in my eyes. "No, sweet girl. You were never broken. You were always perfect. Some people just couldn't see it." I turned 65 that year and scheduled a meeting with my estate attorney, Thomas Brennan, and my accountant, Lisa Chen. "I want to rewrite everything," I told them. "My house, 3 bedrooms, good school district, fully paid off, worth $450,000, would go into a special needs trust for Lily. My life insurance policy, $200,000, trust for Lily. My retirement accounts, $180,000, trust for Lily. My car, my belongings, everything I'd built working double shifts for 30 years, all of it arranged to provide for Lily's future." The trust was ironclad. Money for Lily's education through college, graduate school if she wanted it, housing assistance, ASL interpreting services, technology, medical care, anything she needed to thrive. I named 3 trustees: Marcus Washington from the deaf community, Rachel Washington, his wife and a deaf educator, and Thomas Brennan himself. Thomas looked up from his notes. "Margaret, what about your son, Daniel?" My answer came without hesitation. "My son gets nothing. He abandoned his daughter for being deaf. He called her defective and threw her away like garbage. He doesn't deserve a single penny of what I've built." I also wrote a letter to be read with the will. "Daniel, you threw away your daughter like she was defective merchandise. You erased her from your life to preserve your perfect image. You chose your pride over your child. I will not reward that cruelty. Everything I have goes to Lily, to undo the damage you caused, to give her the future you denied her. You made your choice, now live with it. 6 months after I got custody, my phone rang with a Seattle area code. Daniel. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Mom. His voice was careful, uncertain. I heard about the custody case. Someone sent me news articles. I had no idea you were looking for her all these years. I thought you'd agreed with our decision. The audacity. You didn't ask what I thought, Daniel. You blocked my number and disappeared. I know, and can I see her? Can we talk about... Why? I kept my voice cold. You have your perfect son Tyler in Seattle. Your perfect life with Emma. Why would you want the damaged daughter you threw away? Mom, don't... I've been thinking about this a lot. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe we could... I realized it then. Someone had told him about my will, probably Emma's parents, who still had mutual friends in town. He knew I'd cut him out. This wasn't about Lily. This was about money. You're not in my will, Daniel. Everything goes to Lily. Silence. Then his voice changed, got harder, more entitled. Mom, I'm your only child. You can't just cut me out of... Watch me, I said quietly. You want a relationship with your daughter? Then earn it. Learn ASL, become fluent, not just basics. Get therapy, actually confront your ableism, and then, you apologize to Lily, not to me, to her, in her language. You look her in the eyes and tell her you were wrong. Mom. And then maybe, if Lily decides she wants to know you, I'll consider supervised visits. But understand this, Daniel. She gets to choose now. Her voice matters. And right now? Right now she wants absolutely nothing to do with the father who called her damaged and threw her away. I hung up. Daniel called back 6 times. I blocked his number. 2 years later, Lily is 9 years old and thriving in 4th grade at the state school for the deaf. She's top of her class in math and art. She has 3 best friends who come over for sleepovers, where they stay up too late signing and giggling. She plays on the school's soccer team. Last month, she performed the lead role in the school's ASL Storytelling Festival, a story about a grandmother who moved mountains to find her granddaughter. I cried through the entire performance. She calls me grandmother in sign, a special sign she created herself, combining the traditional sign with the sign for love. It's become my favorite word in any language. I'm 67 now, healthy, active, happy in ways I didn't think possible after James died. I've learned that revenge isn't about punishment, it's about justice. It's about taking everything someone threw away and proving its value. Daniel sends letters sometimes, emails. I file them away unread in a box in my closet. Maybe someday Lily will want to read them. Maybe someday she'll give him a chance to apologize. But that's Lily's choice. Not his. Not mine. Hers. My phone buzzes. A reminder. Lily's school play tonight. She has the lead role again. I grab my coat and head out the door smiling. Because this right here, is what family looks like. Not perfection, acceptance. If you believe every child deserves unconditional love no matter what, hit that subscribe button right now. Share Lily's story with someone who needs to hear it. Because family isn't about perfection, it's about acceptance. And some grandmothers will move heaven and earth to prove it. Subscribe, and I'll keep sharing stories about the families who fight back, who choose love over pride, who prove that blood isn't everything, but loyalty is. Thanks for listening to Lily's story. See you in the